Right now, as you read this, a silent war is being waged. Not with weapons or words, but with chemicals, signals, and strategies millions of years in the making. The combatants? Plants? Yes, those passive green things you walk past every day without a second thought. But here's what most people don't know. Plants can see, hear, remember, communicate, hunt, and even make decisions. They're aware of their surroundings in ways that would shock you. They talk to each other through underground networks. They call in backup when under attack. Some even count. And they've been doing all of this long before humans existed, quietly shaping the very air you breathe and the world you inhabit. A world where being rooted doesn't mean being passive, where silence doesn't mean ignorance, and where the slowest organisms on Earth are actually some of the smartest. The body of a plant, more than meets the eye. They don't move, don't make noise, don't chase prey. But beneath that quiet exterior lies a sophisticated system refined over 400 million years. Every plant is built from three main organs working in elegant coordination: roots, stems, and leaves. Think of it as a biological trinity, each member essential, each performing tasks that keep the organism thriving. Roots are the unsung heroes, hidden underground but far from idle. They don't just absorb water, they explore. Roots can sense gravity, detect moisture gradients, identify physical barriers, and even make choices. When encountering rocks, they branch around them. When meeting toxins, they retreat. When finding nutrients, they proliferate. A single oak tree might have a root system extending 2 or 3 times wider than its canopy, creating an underground architecture as complex and sprawling as any city. And here's something remarkable. The roots of neighboring plants sometimes fuse together, forming natural grafts that allow resource sharing. It's botanical socialism happening silently beneath every forest floor. Stems are the infrastructure, holding leaves up to light, transporting fluids, and often storing resources. Inside every stem run two biological highways, the xylem and the phloem. The xylem carries water upward from roots to leaves through transpiration, like an endless straw pulling moisture skyward. The phloem is more versatile, transporting sugars and nutrients bidirectionally, delivering energy wherever it's needed most. But leaves are where the magic happens. These are marvel of engineering, designed to capture sunlight and exchange gases with precision. Their flat surfaces maximize sun exposure, while tiny pores called stomata regulate gas exchange, opening and closing based on humidity, temperature, and carbon dioxide levels. Inside, chloroplasts work tirelessly, using chlorophyll to convert light into chemical energy through photosynthesis, incidentally producing the oxygen that keeps the rest of us alive. What's truly astonishing is the variety. Pine needles minimize surface area to conserve water in harsh climates. Banana leaves maximize light capture in tropical jungles. Succulent leaves store water for desert survival. Each shape tells a story of evolutionary problem solving, and plants aren't static. They exhibit phenotypic plasticity, the ability to adjust their body form based on surroundings. The same species might grow tall and leggy in shade, or short and bushy in full sun. Roots grow deeper in dry soil, spread wider when nutrients are scarce. These aren't conscious choices, but they're far from random. They're finely tuned feedback loops between organism and environment. Some plants have evolved specialized structures for specific purposes. Tendrils act like plant fingers, wrapping around supports. Thorns and spines serve as defensive armor. Tubers and bulbs, like potatoes and onions, are underground storage units, sophisticated survival tools allowing plants to endure tough seasons. And flowers? These reproductive structures are as practical as they are beautiful, designed to attract pollinators with color and scent, facilitating the creation of seeds and fruit that ensure the next generation. Many plants exhibit indeterminate growth, continuing to build new structures throughout their lives. Unlike animals with largely fixed body plans, plants keep adapting, building, and growing as long as conditions allow, all without nerves, muscles, or a central brain. If you speed up time through time-lapse photography, the full choreography becomes visible. Leaves turning to follow the sun, roots weaving through earth, flowers opening with slow-motion sighs. It's a silent symphony played in a different key. For centuries, plants were seen as passive green machines, sunlight in, oxygen out, nothing interesting in between. But research is shattering that perception. Plants don't have brains, but they possess what researchers call distributed intelligence, information processing spread throughout their tissues rather than centralized. This doesn't mean plants ponder the meaning of life, but they are remarkably good at solving problems and making strategic decisions. Consider the humble pea plant. When offered two supports, one short and close, one tall and far, the plant evaluates both before committing, often choosing the option offering best long-term support. This is an automatic reflex. It's conditional behavior based on assessment. But how does a plant decide without a brain? Through complex biochemical networks. Plants use hormones as messengers, signaling molecules traveling through tissues and even electrical impulses moving from cell to cell at speeds similar to animal nerves, without actual neurons. The mimosa plant provides a famous example. When tapped, its leaves fold instantly, a botanical flinch. Scientists once thought this purely mechanical, but experiments revealed something more. When repeatedly dropped from a short height without damage, mimosa plants initially folded their leaves in response, but over time stopped reacting. They had learned the drop wasn't harmful and stopped wasting energy. What's more, they retained this memory for weeks. This habituation, decreased response to repeated harmless stimuli, is a basic form of learning. In an organism with no brain, no neurons, no traditional memory centers, another experiment placed plants in Y-shaped chambers with light at one end. Plants consistently grew toward light. Then the light was removed and replaced with a fan previously paired with it. The plants still grew toward the fan. They had learned to associate it with light, a process strikingly similar to classical conditioning in animals. Chemical communication is another superpower. When a leaf is chewed by an insect, plants release airborne chemicals signaling other parts of the same plant and even neighboring plants to prepare for attack, triggering production of bitter or toxic compounds. These signals can be so specific they identify the type of attacker. Tomato plants produce different chemicals for caterpillars versus aphids. Plants also make resource allocation decisions. A sunflower in a crowded field will lean toward light, stretch to rise above neighbors, and reroute energy from root growth to support its vertical ambitions. These decisions emerge from decentralized feedback systems, chemical signals creating adjustments like 1,000 tiny sensors on a quiet chip. Even root growth is strategic. Roots explore, compare, and remember. Encountering nutrient-rich soil, they branch out. Hitting toxic areas, they divert. Some studies show roots can recognize their own kin, behaving less competitively near relatives and more aggressively near strangers. This kin recognition hints at social awareness, not emotional, but responsive. There's also evidence of anticipatory behavior. In fluctuating environments, some plants prepare for regular stresses like drought or grazing, adjusting internal chemistry in advance. It's not quite memory in the human sense, but it's memory-like, a biological record influencing future behavior. This brings us to perhaps the most fascinating concept: distributed intelligence. Unlike animals relying on central nervous systems, plants process information decentrally. Every root tip, every leaf cell, every growth point is both sensor and responder. There's no command center. Instead, intelligence emerges from collective input. a democracy of cells, and this makes plants incredibly resilient. Damage an animal's brain and the system can fail. A plant can lose most of its body and still recover, regrow, reconfigure. Its intelligence isn't tied to one location. It's built into the structure of its being. Beneath every forest path lies a bustling metropolis humming with life, signals, trade routes, alliances, and occasional sabotage. Root systems form vast dynamic networks, reaching out, communicating, and interacting in surprisingly sophisticated ways. Roots are more than thirsty tentacles. They anchor plants, absorb nutrients, and serve as frontline sensor arrays, constantly tasting soil and reporting back. But they also interact with other roots, microorganisms, and fungi in ways resembling social behavior. The most fascinating aspect is how plants work with mycorrhizal fungi, forming mutualistic symbiosis where both parties benefit. Fungi wrap around or into plant roots, creating interfaces for nutrient exchange. Fungi deliver hard-to-reach minerals, especially phosphorus and nitrogen, from soil. In return, plants pay in sugar. It's a long-term trade agreement, and it's incredibly common. Over 90% of land plants engage in mycorrhizal relationships. This partnership forms the backbone of what scientists call the Wood Wide Web, a vast underground communication and resource-sharing network connecting not just individual plants, but entire communities through fungal partners. Trees can pass chemical signals and even share nutrients with neighbors. If one tree is attacked by insects or begins drying from drought, it may send warning signals through the fungal network. Nearby trees receiving the alert can prepare by boosting chemical defenses or closing stomata to conserve water. In nutrient-poor conditions, certain trees transfer sugars or nitrogen to others through these fungal connections. Sometimes recipients are their own seedlings, but generosity often extends to unrelated neighbors. Older established trees. Mother trees tend to be large, mature individuals with vast root and fungal networks extending through forest floors. Their ability to support other trees may not be entirely altruistic. Maintaining healthy understory benefits the whole forest, but it challenges the idea of plants as strictly self-interested loners. Not all root interactions are harmonious. The underground world is competitive. Plants growing in close quarters often compete fiercely for space, water, and nutrients. Some release chemical compounds into soil, inhibiting rival growth, a process called allelopathy. Black walnut trees exude juglone, toxic to many species, giving them competitive edge. It's botanical shade throwing. Roots are also sophisticated sensory organs, detecting water gradients, nutrient concentrations, soil texture, pH levels, and mechanical barriers. Watching roots in time-lapse reveals exploration. Probing, pausing, redirecting, almost like curious worms feeling forward. There's even evidence roots can listen. In experiments, plants exposed to running water sounds without actual water grew roots toward the sound, suggesting plants detect vibrations and use them to guide growth. When pathogens are detected, roots mount defense responses, releasing antimicrobial compounds, altering growth patterns, or calling in help from beneficial microbes. Legumes maintain symbiotic relationships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria housed in special root nodules, tiny factories converting atmospheric nitrogen into usable forms. This biological teamwork is essential for ecosystems. When root systems and microbial partners thrive, plants above are more resilient to drought, disease, and stress. But when these underground networks are disrupted by soil compaction, pollution, or deforestation, entire ecosystems can falter. The complexity of these networks has even inspired new technologies. Scientists study root systems and fungal networks as models for decentralized systems like internet architecture and robotics. After all, a network that can grow, adapt, reroute, and self-repair without central control is a compelling blueprint. What makes these underground networks even more fascinating is their age and scale. Some mycorrhizal networks are estimated to be thousands of years old, predating many of the trees currently connected to them. They represent a kind of biological infrastructure that transcends individual organisms, a living internet that was operational long before humans invented telecommunications. In practical terms, this has profound implications for how we approach forestry, agriculture, and conservation. When we clear cut a forest, we're not just removing trees, we're destroying an intricate web of relationships that took centuries to establish. The soil microbiome, the fungal networks, the chemical communication pathways, all of it collapses. This is why replanting efforts, while valuable, often struggle to recreate the ecological complexity of old-growth forests. You can plant saplings, but you can't instantly recreate the underground social network. Agricultural scientists are now paying attention to this. There's growing recognition that healthy soil isn't just about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels. It's about maintaining living communities of microorganisms that partner with plant roots. Practices like no-till farming, cover cropping, and reducing synthetic fertilizer use all aim to preserve these underground networks. When the networks thrive, plants become more resilient to drought, disease, and pests. Some researchers are even experimenting with inoculating crops with beneficial fungi and bacteria, essentially jump-starting the underground communication network in agricultural settings. Early results suggest this could reduce the need for fertilizers and pesticides while improving crop yields. A win-win for both farmers and the environment. The underground world also plays a crucial role in carbon sequestration. When plants photosynthesize, they don't keep all the sugar for themselves. Some of it, as much as 3040% in some species, gets shuttled down to the roots and traded to fungal partners. The fungi use some of this carbon and release some into the soil, where it can remain locked away for years or even decades. This means the Wood Wide Web isn't just a communication network. It's also a carbon storage system, quietly pulling greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere and tucking them underground. Understanding these processes has become urgent as we face climate change. Protecting existing forests and their underground networks may be one of our most powerful tools for carbon sequestration. And restoring degraded lands, not just by planting trees, but by nurturing the entire soil ecosystem, could help us draw down atmospheric carbon at scale. The more we learn about what's happening beneath our feet, the more we realize how much we've underestimated it. That quiet patch of soil you're standing on, it's not dirt, it's a metropolis. It's a marketplace, it's a communication hub. It's a pharmacy, a library, and a carbon bank all rolled into one. And it's all thanks to the collaboration between roots and fungi, carrying on conversations we're only just beginning to understand. Plants lack eyes, ears, and noses, but they've developed sophisticated ways to gather environmental information. They detect light, gravity, touch, temperature, moisture, and even sound. They sense when being nibbled, when neighbors are nearby, and when days are lengthening or shortening. Light perception is incredibly refined. Bands don't just detect presence of light. They measure intensity, angle, duration, and color through light-sensitive proteins acting as internal photoreceptors. Phytochromes detect red and far-red light, helping plants determine light quality. When light passes through canopy, red wavelengths are absorbed by upper leaves while far-red wavelengths pass through. Detecting higher far-red ratios tells plants they're being shaded, triggering growth responses to reach sunlight. Plants also use cryptochromes and phototropins to detect blue light, regulating seedling development, stomatal opening, and leaf positioning. Some species even track the sun's movement across the sky. Heliotropism, like sunflowers slowly turning east to west. Plants have circadian rhythms. internal clocks running on roughly 24-hour cycles, anticipating environmental changes even in total darkness. These rhythms regulate leaf movement, flower opening, and hormone production. Some plants open flowers at specific times, aligning with pollinator activity patterns. Touch sensitivity, tigmotropism, is highly developed. Vines wrap around trellises, tendrils curl after brushing surfaces. Mechanical stimulation triggers biochemical cascades, causing cells on one side to grow faster, creating bends. The mimosa folds leaves inward when touched through changes in turgor pressure. Specialized cells suddenly lose water, collapsing and folding the leaf. This may deter herbivores or shake off insects. The Venus flytrap has trigger hairs requiring 2 touches within 20 seconds before snapping shut. A precise mechanosensory system avoiding false alarms. There's emerging evidence plants can sense sound. Roots grow toward running water sounds, even without moisture present. Some studies suggest plants distinguish between sound frequencies and alter growth or chemical production in response. Sound is just vibration, and plants have mechanoreceptors detecting pressure changes. Some researchers believe this helps plants locate underground water or respond to herbivore chewing sounds. Chemical detection is constantly active. Plants sample air and soil for chemical cues, releasing and detecting volatile organic compounds. When attacked by herbivores, plants release warning chemicals. Nearby plants detecting these signals ramp up defenses, producing bitter compounds, thickening leaves, or summoning predatory insects feeding on attackers. This chemical gossip can happen between same species or different species plants. Some plants are selective about who they listen to. Sagebrush responds more to signals from genetically related individuals. Plants also detect neighboring plants before touching or shading each other simply by detecting chemicals released by nearby roots. Gravity, gravitropism, is constantly monitored. Inside plant cells are stateless, tiny starch-filled organelles settling in response to gravity, providing directional signals. Roots grow downward, shoots grow upward. Tilt a potted plant sideways and it will curve upward again within hours or days. Plants sense moisture with precision. Roots grow toward higher water concentration. Hydrotropism, detecting tiny gradients, sometimes just a few percent different from one side of a root tip to another. Temperature doesn't escape attention either. Many plants require cold periods before flowering. Vernalization, ensuring flowering doesn't happen too early when frost might threaten. Some seeds use temperature cues to determine germination timing. This suite of senses gives plants remarkably detailed environmental pictures. They may not see with eyes or hear with ears, but they sense the world with quiet, distributed intelligence, rivaling many animals in sensitivity and nuance. Photosynthesis is one of Earth's most elegant and essential processes. The reason you, me, whales, hummingbirds, and donuts all exist. At its core, photosynthesis is how plants turn light energy into chemical energy. They take sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, creating glucose, while releasing oxygen. Incredibly generous and rather fortunate for the rest of us. The main actors are chloroplasts, tiny green organelles inside plant cells filled with chlorophyll, the pigment giving plants green color and responsible for capturing light energy. Chlorophyll absorbs red and blue light spectrum parts while mostly reflecting green light, which is why plants appear green. When chlorophyll captures light energy, it excites electrons within the molecule, giving them energy to hop onto the electron transport chain, a tiny high-speed assembly line buzzing with charged particles and chemical tricks. Photosynthesis has 2 main stages. Light-dependent reactions require light and take place in thylakoid membranes, like stacks of green pancakes. When chlorophyll absorbs sunlight, it splits water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen is released as byproduct. Hydrogen sticks around in high-energy molecules like ATP and NADPH, the plant's rechargeable batteries. The Calvin cycle. light-independent reactions, takes place in the stroma. Here, plants use carbon dioxide from air and energy from ATP and NADPH batteries to build glucose molecules. Glucose is the starting point for everything the plant needs, used immediately for energy, stored as starch, or turned into cellulose for cell walls. This process of pulling carbon dioxide from atmosphere and converting it into energy-rich sugars is the foundation of nearly every food chain on Earth. A single large tree might have hundreds of thousands of leaves, each covered in millions of chloroplasts, each packed with thylakoid stacks. It's a solar farm on microscopic scale, humming away without wires or plugs. But plants aren't passive solar panels. They adjust photosynthesis depending on conditions, ramping up in bright light, slowing in shade. In dry conditions, they might close stomata to conserve water, even if it reduces carbon dioxide intake and photosynthetic output. It's constant balancing between energy gain and water loss. Some plants have evolved clever variations. Most follow C3 photosynthesis, but in hotter climates where water is scarce, this becomes inefficient. Some plants develop C4 photosynthesis, like corn and sugarcane, physically separating carbon fixation stages into different cell types, concentrating carbon dioxide where needed, and minimizing wasteful reactions. Cam plants, like cacti and pineapples, only open stomata at night when air is cooler and more humid, storing carbon dioxide until daylight returns for photosynthesis while keeping stomata tightly closed. It's a brilliant strategy for water conservation. Photosynthesis doesn't just support plants, it shapes the entire planet. Over billions of years, it transformed Earth's atmosphere. Early Earth had almost no oxygen. The rise of photosynthetic organisms, particularly cyanobacteria, began pumping oxygen into air, leading to the Great Oxygenation Event around 2 billion years ago, making aerobic life possible. In a very real sense, the oxygen in every breath you take is a gift from photosynthesis, not just from plants, but from algae and photosynthetic plankton in oceans producing roughly half of Earth's atmospheric oxygen. By pulling carbon dioxide from air, plants help reduce greenhouse gases and moderate global temperatures. Forests, wetlands, and grasslands act as carbon sinks, locking away carbon in biomass and soil. Just like animals use hormones to regulate growth, development, and behavior, plants rely on internal chemical messengers moving through sap, cell membranes, and intercellular spaces, triggering changes as they go. Auxin is the superstar plant hormone, playing central roles in coordinating growth, especially in phototropism, the tendency to grow toward light. When light shines on one side of a plant, auxin redistributes to the shaded side, causing cells there to elongate more than those on the light side, making the plant bend toward light. Auxin also guides root growth. Roots respond to gravity by growing downward. Gravitropism. When a plant is tilted, auxin shifts to the root's lower side, but here it has opposite effect, slowing cell elongation. This causes the upper side to grow more quickly, bending the root back downward. Gibberellins are powerful growth promoters, helping elongate stems, break seed dormancy, and trigger flowering. Cytokinins promote cell division, working in tandem with auxin but often playing counterbalancing roles. While auxin encourages root growth, cytokinins encourage shoot growth. The ratio between them determines whether plants put more energy into growing up or digging down. Abscisic acid acts like the plant's emergency brake, helping deal with stress, particularly drought. When water is scarce, abscisic acid signals stomata to close, reducing water loss. It also helps seeds stay dormant during unfavorable conditions. Ethylene is a gaseous hormone acting like the plant's internal clock and social cue, regulating fruit ripening, flower wilting, and leaf fall. Ever left a banana near other fruit and noticed everything ripens faster? That's ethylene at work. Bananas release ethylene gas, triggering ripening in nearby produce. Ethylene also helps plants respond to mechanical stress. When seedlings push through soil and hit resistance, ethylene release modifies growth patterns. Instead of growing tall and slender, risking breakage, plants thicken stems and slow upward growth, creating sturdier builds. These hormones don't act in isolation. They're in constant dialogue, modulating and balancing effects based on internal needs and external circumstances. It's not top-down command but fluid, decentralized coordination, more like jazz band improvising than military parade. All this hormonal chatter results in graceful movements, sunflowers turning toward morning sun, vines sending searching tendrils curling around fence posts, leaves drooping in heat and perking up by evening. Time-lapse photography reveals these movements clearly. Speed up a plant's life and it becomes a dancer, bending towards sun, unfurling new leaves, twirling vines, swaying in response to unseen signals. It's a reminder that just because something moves slowly doesn't mean it's not moving at all. Plants may not have cell phones or internet, but they're excellent communicators, passing messages for hundreds of millions of years quietly and efficiently. Chemical warnings are clearest examples. When attacked by caterpillars, plants don't suffer silently. They respond by releasing volatile organic compounds, VOX, into air. Tiny airborne chemicals drifting out and spreading through surrounding areas. To us, they might carry faint, grassy smells. To other plants, they're emergency broadcast systems. Neighboring plants detecting VOCs ramp up defenses, producing bitter or toxic compounds, making them less palatable or thickening leaves. This happens within minutes of receiving signals. Wild tobacco plants demonstrate this beautifully. When attacked by caterpillars, they release specific VOC blends warning nearby tobacco plants, while also attracting predatory insects like parasitic wasps, natural caterpillar enemies. The plant essentially calls in air support. Chemical messages are often highly specific. Tobacco plants being eaten by caterpillars produce different signals than those attacked by beetles. Some plants distinguish between mechanical damage, broken leaf, and biological attack. Simply snipping a leaf won't trigger the same cascade as actual herbivory because enzymes in insect saliva are part of what triggers alarm systems. There's evidence these warning signals aren't just one-way broadcasts, they're broader conversations. Some plants respond more strongly to distress signals from close relatives than unrelated neighbors. This plant-to-plant communication has been observed in many species, from corn and beans to maple trees and sagebrush. But communication doesn't stop at air. Roots send chemical messages through soil, often using fungal networks as conduits, allowing plants to coordinate responses across longer distances. Communication isn't always about danger. Plants use chemical cues to attract allies. Flowers are botanical billboards advertising to pollinators with bright colors, alluring shapes, and irresistible scents. Floral scents involve hundreds of different volatile compounds, varying by species, time of day, bloom stage. Many flowers produce more scent in evening, targeting nocturnal pollinators like moths. Others sync fragrance to busy bee or butterfly hours. Some even change scent after pollination, letting visitors know the buffet is closed. But plants can go further. Some don't just attract insects, they manipulate them. Orchid families include species using chemical mimicry to lure pollinators. The bee orchid produces flowers looking and smelling like female bees. Male bees, tricked by botanical impersonation, attempt to mate with flowers, pseudocopulation, picking up pollen and carrying it to the next deceiving bloom. Not all communication is altruistic. Some plants use chemical warfare sabotaging neighbors, allelopathy, releasing compounds into air or soil inhibiting competing plant growth. Black walnut trees secrete juglone, toxic to many species, chemically sterilizing soil around them. Chemical communication is so effective that researchers explore agricultural uses. By mimicking natural warning signals, it may be possible to create treatments helping crops defend themselves without synthetic pesticides. When it comes to self-defense, plants have surprisingly sophisticated playbooks. Imagine being constantly surrounded by hungry mouths yet unable to run, swat, or scream. What's a leafy life form to do? Quite a lot, actually. Physical structures are most visible defenses. Many plants come equipped with built-in armor: thorns, spines, and prickles, botanical barbed wire. Roses have prickles, sharp epidermis outgrowths. Cacti have spines, modified leaves. Hawthorns and blackberries have thorns, modified branches. These discourage animals from taking bites or brushing too close. But there are subtler defenses. Many plants have fine hairs on leaves or stems, trichomes making surfaces feel unpleasantly fuzzy, irritating, or sticky to insects. In stinging nettles, trichomes act like hypodermic needles, injecting irritants when touched. Plants don't stop at surface level. Many powerful defenses are invisible until tasted. Plants produce astonishing varieties of chemical compounds specifically designed to deter herbivores, some bitter, some toxic, some messing with digestion unpleasantly. Alkaloids are nitrogen-containing compounds including familiar names: caffeine, nicotine, morphine, and quinine. While humans found uses for them, medicinal, recreational, otherwise, plants use them primarily to make themselves unappetizing or dangerous. Caffeine is toxic to many insects in high concentrations. Nicotine is a powerful neurotoxin deterring insect herbivores. Tannins from tea or red wine bind to proteins, making them harder to digest. In plants, this means tannin-laced leaves become less nutritious and more annoying for animals chewing them. Cyanogenic glycosides release hydrogen cyanide when plant tissue is damaged, potentially fatal to insects and larger animals. Some clover types, cassava, and even apple seeds contain these in small amounts. Glucosinolates, sulfur-containing compounds in mustard family members like cabbage, broccoli, horseradish, create pungent, spicy tastes when chewed. To rabbits, that hot zing might be reason to reconsider dinner. To us, it's a condiment. Interestingly, many plant chemicals we now enjoy as flavors, fragrances, or medicine started as defense mechanisms. Plants never intended to make our salads exciting or spice racks colorful. They were simply trying to avoid becoming lunch. But defense isn't always about making things unpleasant. Sometimes it's about recruiting reinforcements. When under attack, certain plants release VOCs, attracting predatory insects. Corn, cotton, and lima beans emit specific scents when caterpillars chew leaves, summoning parasitic wasps laying eggs inside caterpillars. Wasp larvae develop inside herbivores, ultimately killing them. It's gruesome but effective, letting nature's hit squad handle problems. Some plants form more permanent alliances. Acacia trees have close relationships with certain ant species. Trees produce hollow thorns where ants live, plus nectar-rich food bodies. In return, ants patrol branches, attacking herbivores or other plants coming too close. It's classic room and board for security arrangement, benefiting both parties. Some plants rely on trickery. Passion flower vines produce yellowish spots on leaves looking like butterfly eggs. Since butterflies avoid laying eggs on leaves appearing occupied, avoiding competition and predators, this simple visual deception reduces caterpillars the plant must deal with. Many defenses are induced, kicking in only when plants detect damage or stress. Induced defenses save energy, but constitutive defenses, like thorns, tough leaves, baseline toxic compounds, offer constant protection. Most plants use mixes of both. There's even evidence of biochemical memory. Some plants keep records of past attacks, allowing quicker responses if same threats return. It's not memory in human sense, but physiological preparedness, learned response encoded in molecular pathways. Pollination isn't just biology. Its pageant, parade, courtship, a delicate, dazzling dance between flower and visitor, with petals as stage curtains and nectar as prize. At the heart is simple need. Plants require outside help for reproduction. They need pollen, powdery packets of male genetic material, to reach receptive stigma of another flower. Wind-pollinated plants handle this with brute force, producing enormous pollen clouds scattered like biological confetti. It's not elegant or precise, but it works and explains allergy season. But for flowering plants relying on animals, strategy becomes far more refined. These plants evolved to attract, feed, and guide pollinators, from bees and butterflies to birds, bats, beetles, and occasional lizards. Each flower becomes carefully designed invitation. Come closer, take a sip, and if you wouldn't mind brushing against this pollen, bees are arguably most important pollinators. Many flowers evolved specifically to attract them, offering sweet nectar in exchange for pollen relocation. Bee-pollinated flowers are usually brightly colored, especially blue and violet, which bees see well, and often sweet fragranced. They tend to be open and accessible. Some add visual cues like ultraviolet nectar guides, patterns invisible to humans but glowing like landing lights for bees, directing insects to flower centers where reproductive parts wait. Butterflies prefer different layouts. With long, slender proboscises and gentle landing habits, butterfly catering flowers are often tubular, brightly colored, reds, oranges, pinks, usually lacking strong scents. Butterflies rely more on sight than smell, and often providing broad landing platforms. Moths pollinate at night. Moth-pollinated flowers are typically pale or white, standing out in moonlight, and emit strong, sweet fragrances guiding visitors through darkness. Jasmine, yucca, and evening primrose are moth-pollinated, blooming just in time for twilight's fluttering guests. Birds, particularly hummingbirds, also participate. Bird-adapted flowers are often vivid red or orange, with long tubular shapes matching bird beaks. These produce copious nectar but little scent. Birds have excellent vision but poor smell sense. Hummingbirds hover like feathered helicopters, sipping while inadvertently dusting faces with pollen. Bats play vital roles, especially in tropics. Bat-pollinated flowers tend to be large, sturdy, nocturnal, hanging down to accommodate bat flight patterns, filled with sweet musky nectar. Some smell faintly of fermented fruit. Bat, irresistible. If you've eaten bananas, mangoes, or guavas, you might have bats to thank. Beetles, often overlooked and not graceful, are among earliest pollinators evolutionarily. Beetle-reliant flowers tend to be tough, open, bowl-shaped, offering sturdy platforms for clumsy visitors, often emitting strong, spicy, or unpleasant odors. Beetles like a bit of funk. While most pollination relationships are mutualistic, both benefiting, some plants cheat. Some orchids produce flowers mimicking female insect appearance and scent. Male insects, tricked into thinking they found mates, attempt copulation with flowers. During awkward encounters, they collect or deposit pollen. It's floral con job, working remarkably well. In some cases, relationships become so tight that plant and pollinator are completely dependent on each other. Classic example, yucca plant and yucca moth. Female moths deliberately gather pollen from one flower, fly to another, deposit pollen, and lay eggs in ovary. Plant is pollinated. Moth larvae eat some developing seeds, but not all. Its beautifully balanced arrangement evolved through countless generations. Pollination is also big business in human agriculture. Many crops depend heavily on managed pollinators, especially honeybees. Almond orchards in California require billions of bees annually, brought in by truckload just for flowering periods. But there are challenges. Habitat loss, pesticide use, climate change, and disease have taken tolls on pollinator populations worldwide. Bees particularly face steep declines, raising concerns about food security and ecosystem health. Fortunately, awareness is growing. Gardeners, farmers, and city planners increasingly work to create pollinator-friendly environments, planting native flowers, reducing pesticide use, providing shelter. Even small balcony gardens can support pollinators. Pollination isn't just biological transaction. It's celebration of connection, reminder that even most stationary organisms are deeply intertwined with the world around them. A flower opens, a bee visits, a seed is made, simple and sublime, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Trees are elder statesmen of the plant kingdom, towering, ancient, often slow to change. But despite stillness, trees are far from solitary or passive. Many are deeply social creatures, connected, responsive, and surprisingly attuned to neighbors. Some researchers argue trees have memory, not conscious storytelling sense, but long-lasting physiological responses to past experiences. It's slow motion remembering written in rings, branches, and chemical cues. In healthy forests, roots of neighboring trees often overlap and fuse. Through these connections, trees share water, nutrients, and chemical signals. But true magic happens through fungal partners. Mycorrhizal fungi forming common mycorrhizal networks, sometimes nicknamed the Wood Wide Web. Through these underground networks, trees share resources and information across considerable distances. If one tree struggles due to drought or insect attack, neighboring trees might shift sugar exports through fungal networks to help support it. This happens especially between parent trees and offspring. Large established trees may funnel resources to smaller nearby saplings, particularly if genetically related, helping young trees survive dense shade until reaching enough light to thrive. Some trees seem to recognize kin. In experiments, seedlings growing near siblings allocate resources differently than those near unrelated individuals. Kin plants are less competitive, more cooperative, gentle root-level nepotism helping ensure family tree success. But underground generosity isn't limited to relatives. Sometimes trees of different species exchange nutrients, especially when environmental conditions vary across forests. Fast-growing species capturing lots of light might share sugars with shade-tolerant neighbors having better water or nutrient access. The forest becomes collaborative economy, where trees act less like isolated competitors. Not everything is cooperative, though. Some trees release allelopathic compounds into soil, chemicals inhibiting competitor growth. Black walnut trees produce juglone, toxic to many species, giving competitive edges by reducing nearby rivals. But long-term, collaboration often wins. Forests thrive not because of ruthless competition, but because of balance. Diverse forests with many different tree species and age groups are more resilient to pests, diseases, and environmental stress. The network of connections, fungal and chemical, acts like immune system for whole ecosystem, passing signals and shoring up weak points. These connections may even carry information resembling memory. Trees can remember past droughts, in the sense they alter behavior based on past stress. Trees experiencing dry periods may respond more quickly and strongly to future droughts. This isn't neural memory, but physiological preparedness, internal chemistry, gene expression, and growth patterns changing in ways reflecting past experiences. Tree rings are another memory form, one humans have read for centuries. Each ring represents a year of growth. By studying ring width and composition, scientists learn about historical climate patterns, forest fires, disease outbreaks, and more. Drought years produce narrow rings. Wet years produce wider ones. Some rings bear scars from lightning strikes or insect infestations. Trees are living archives of their own lives and conditions endured. Trees also store information in tissue chemical makeup. Leaves, bark, and sap carry signatures of past events. Certain stress hormones may linger in tree systems for weeks or months after attacks, helping trees respond more quickly if threats return. Trees not only remember, they teach, sending signals to nearby trees warning them to prepare. This capacity for memory and communication becomes especially important considering long-lived trees. Some species live hundreds, even thousands of years. Bristlecone pines in California are over 4,000 years old. Quaking aspen colony in Utah, Pando, may be tens of thousands of years old, counting shared root systems. These trees weathered climate changes, survived fires and floods, watched entire civilizations rise and fall. Longevity depends partly on ability to adapt and share resources across generations. Even canopies show awareness signs. In some forests, trees of same species grow branches avoiding overlapping with neighbors. Crown shyness, resulting in striking patterns of narrow gaps between tree crowns when viewed from below. Causes are debated, reducing pest spread, minimizing physical damage from wind, but results clearly show trees responding to each other's presence even high above ground. The phenomenon of crown shyness is particularly mesmerizing when you look up through a forest canopy. The trees seem to be maintaining respectful distances from each other, creating puzzle-like patterns of light and leaves. Some researchers believe this happens because when branches touch and scrape against each other in the wind, it causes damage that inhibits growth at those contact points. Over time, this creates the distinctive gaps. Others think trees might be able to detect far red light reflected from neighboring leaves, using this information to avoid growing into occupied space. Whatever the mechanism, crown shyness is a perfect metaphor for how trees navigate their world, not with aggressive competition, but with sophisticated awareness and adjustment. They don't fight for every inch. They find ways to coexist. Trees also guide ecosystem development through a process ecologists call succession. When a forest is cleared, whether by fire, storm, logging, or disease, the first plants to colonize the bare ground are usually fast-growing species like grasses and shrubs. These pioneer species aren't particularly long-lived, but they stabilize the soil, add organic matter, and create conditions that allow slower-growing trees to establish. Over time, these early trees grow tall enough to shade out the pioneers, creating cooler, moister conditions at ground level. This allows shade-tolerant species to germinate and grow. Eventually, these shade-tolerant trees outlive the pioneers, creating what's called a climax forest, a stable community that can persist for centuries if left undisturbed. But here's the remarkable part. Throughout this process, trees aren't just passively responding to conditions, they're actively creating them. Their roots break up rock, creating soil. Their fallen leaves add nutrients. Their canopies moderate temperature and humidity. Their trunks create habitat for countless other species. In this way, trees don't just live in ecosystems, they build them. This ecosystem engineering is particularly evident in nurse trees, larger established trees that create favorable conditions for younger trees to grow. In harsh environments like alpine zones or recently burned areas, you'll often see patterns where young trees are clustered around older ones. The older tree provides shade, reduces wind, moderates soil temperature, and adds nutrients through leaf drop. Without these nurse trees, the young saplings might not survive at all. And it's been standing there, quietly doing all of this, while empires rose and fell, while technologies advanced from stone tools to smartphones, while the human population grew from millions to billions. Trees don't hurry, they don't panic. They just grow, season by season, ring by ring, steadily and surely, exactly where they need to be. Trees also guide ecosystem development. As they grow and die, they shape soil, Light conditions, moisture levels, and entire microclimates. Fallen leaves become mulch, roots hold soil in place, branches offer shelter to birds, insects, countless other species. When large trees fall, they create some tree species have even evolved to depend on catastrophic events like wildfire. Fire-adapted trees like lodgepole pines have serotinous cones that only release seeds when exposed to intense heat. After a fire sweeps through, clearing out competition and releasing nutrients from burned vegetation, these seeds germinate in mass, creating even-aged stands of trees. The trees essentially wait for disaster, then seize the opportunity. This ability to respond to and even benefit from disturbance is part of what makes trees so resilient. They've survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor strikes, and dramatic climate shifts. They've adapted to nearly every terrestrial environment on Earth. And they've done it not by resisting change, but by incorporating it into their life strategies. Perhaps this is the most valuable lesson trees have to teach us. Resilience isn't about rigidity, it's about flexibility, communication, cooperation, and patience. It's about building networks that support the whole community. It's about giving as much as you take. It's about planning for the long term, not just years, but decades and centuries. When you stand beneath an old tree, you're standing in the presence of a being that has weathered storms you can't imagine, witnessed changes you'll never see, and participated in an underground community so vast and complex, we're only beginning to map it. That tree is not just a tree. It's a library, a weather station, a carbon sink, a habitat, a pharmacy, and a communications hub. It's a living bridge between past and future, between soil and sky, between countless organisms in an intricate web of life. Knoppy openings allowing light to reach forest floors and giving new plants chances to grow. Even in death, trees nourish life around them. If you've seen Venus flytraps in action, it's hard not to be impressed. There's something delightful and slightly alarming about plants snapping shut around insects, as though nature decided to walk on the weird side. But Venus flytraps are only tip of iceberg for plants eating meat. Across bogs, swamps, and nutrient-poor soils, curious botanical outliers evolved to feast on animals, not because bloodthirsty, but because they had to get creative about dinner. Carnivorous plants evolved in environments where soil is low in essential nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus. These plants still perform photosynthesis like leafy cousins, but it's not enough to meet all nutritional needs. So they developed extraordinary adaptations, supplementing diets, essentially adding animal protein to menus. Venus flytraps look like science fiction dreams. Each modified leaf splits into two lobes opening wide like hinged jaws with tiny hair-like triggers on inner surfaces. When unsuspecting insects touch these hairs twice within about 20 seconds, traps snap shut, one of fastest movements in plant kingdom. No muscles, no nerves, just hydraulic pressure and clever geometry. Once closed, traps seal tightly and begin digesting unlucky insects. Plants release enzymes breaking down soft tissues, absorbing nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. After about a week, traps reopen, revealing dry, indigestible insect parts, legs, wings, exoskeletons, blown away by breeze or washed by rain. Neat, efficient, strangely elegant, pitcher plants come in many varieties, Nepenthes, Sarracenia families. These form deep vase-shaped structures, pitchers filled with digestive liquid. Inner walls are often slippery, many producing nectar or scent luring insects. Once inside, hapless visitors find escape difficult. Some pitcher plants have downward-pointing hairs, making climbing out nearly impossible. Others rely on waxy surfaces, becoming dangerously slick when wet. Trapped insects eventually drown in
The
bottom
Veil
liquid where
Nebula,
enzymes or
delicate
symbiotic
filaments
bacteria
of a
break down bodies.
10,000-year-old
Plants
supernova
absorb
remnant.
released nutrients
Shock
through special pitcher lining cells. Some larger species, like Nepenthes raja, trap not just insects but also small frogs, lizards, even rodents. These are rare events but lend certain gothic flair to already dramatic carnivorous plant world. Sundus take different approaches. These charming little plants, found on every continent except Antarctica, look like glitter-covered fantasy film props. Leaves are covered in fine glandular hairs tipped with sticky mucilage droplets. To human eyes, it looks like morning dew, hence the name. To insects, it's trap. When bugs land on leaves, they quickly find themselves stuck. The more they struggle, the more entangled they become. In some species, leaves actually curl around prey, increasing contact and digestive efficiency. Its slow, glistening embrace, insects won't survive. Bladderworts develop perhaps most sophisticated trapping mechanisms. These aquatic or semi-aquatic plants produce tiny bladder-like structures on stems. Each bladder has trapped or sealed shut by pressure. When small aquatic organisms, mosquito larvae, water fleas, touch sensitive hairs near trap entrances, bladders snap open in less than a millisecond, sucking in water and prey alike. Its fastest known movement in plant kingdom, happening underwater, hidden from view. Corkscrew plants take passive traps to new levels. Found mostly in tropical areas, they have underground leaves forming spiraling tubes. Tiny soil organisms wander in through openings, lured by secretions, finding themselves trapped in twisting tunnels leading only one way, downward, eventually reaching digestion chambers. What all these plants share is remarkable ability to convert animal protein into plant food. They don't just digest for fun, they do it to survive. In environments where most other plants struggle finding enough nitrogen or phosphorus, carnivorous plants carve niches by adding protein to otherwise green diets. The enzymes used in digestion, proteases, phosphatases, others, are highly efficient and specialized. Some plants even adjust enzyme production based on what they've caught. If plants trap protein-rich insects, they may produce more proteases. If prey is chitin-rich, they may upregulate chitinase production instead. Evolutionary origins of plant carnivory are fascinating. Scientists believe carnivorous traits evolved independently multiple times across different lineages, suggesting eating animals is a pretty good idea if your plant's stuck in nutrient-poor soil. Somewhere in laboratories, tucked behind flasks, grow lights, and suspiciously content philodendrons, quiet revolutions are taking place. Scientists have come to see plants not just as garden inhabitants or salad components, but as gateways to solving humanity's biggest challenges. Climate change is where plants truly shine. Through photosynthesis, they've been quietly managing carbon dioxide for hundreds of millions of years, absorbing it from atmosphere and converting it into sugars, releasing oxygen. Forests, grasslands, and oceans full of phytoplankton act as enormous carbon sinks, natural systems absorbing more carbon than emitting. But scientists now explore ways to enhance this natural capacity. Through genetic engineering and selective breeding, researchers develop superplants that grow faster, absorb more carbon, or store it deeper in soil. One example, modifying crop root systems so more carbon stays underground, potentially locking it away for years or centuries. Its botanical bank account sequestering carbon safely out of atmospheric circulation. There's also work optimizing photosynthesis itself. While miraculous, photosynthesis isn't particularly efficient. Only small fractions of captured sunlight end up as usable energy. Scientists experiment with ways to tweak biochemical photosynthesis pathways, increasing efficiency. If successful, such improvements could lead to faster growing crops, requiring less land, water, and fewer chemical inputs, helping feed growing global populations without exhausting natural resources. Agriculture faces laundry lists of challenges: climate unpredictability, soil degradation, water scarcity, increasing demand from swelling populations. But once again, plants may be part of solutions. Vertical farming and controlled environment agriculture allow crops grown indoors, stacked in layers, carefully monitored using sensors, automation, and LED lighting tuned to exactly right wavelengths. Crops grow faster, use less water, require no pesticides. Since farms can be located in cities or harsh environments, they reduce long-distance transportation needs. Imagine fresh strawberries grown in skyscrapers in desert middles. Thanks to plant science, that's not science fiction anymore. There's growing interest in perennial crops, plants not needing annual replanting. Most major food crops, wheat, rice, corn, are annuals, meaning farmers must plow, sow, fertilize, and harvest from scratch every season. Perennials stay in ground year after year, reducing erosion, improving soil health. Scientists work on developing perennial versions of staple crops, potentially leading to more sustainable agriculture systems worldwide. Medicine is another frontier. Over 50% of modern pharmaceuticals originate from plant compounds. From aspirin, tracing roots to willow bark, to cancer-fighting drugs derived from Madagascar periwinkle. Plants quietly save lives for centuries. Researchers continue searching plant kingdom for new cures. Synthetic biology combines biology and engineering, allowing scientists to redesign plants from inside out. By inserting or editing specific genes, researchers create plants that glow, produce vaccines, or clean up toxic waste. Phytoremediation, using plants to clean environmental pollutants, is an exciting example. Certain species, like sunflowers and poplar trees, are particularly good at absorbing heavy metals, radioactive materials, and other toxins from soil and water. These green vacuums help clean areas affected by industrial spills and nuclear disasters, offering sustainable, cost-effective alternatives to mechanical cleanup. Other scientists explore using plants as biofactories. Imagine tobacco plant fields genetically engineered to produce life-saving drugs instead of nicotine, or rice plants containing additional nutrients helping prevent malnutrition. Space exploration needs plants too. As we look toward Moon, Mars, and beyond, we'll need to bring green with us. Plants are key to life support systems in space because they recycle carbon dioxide, produce oxygen, and provide food for astronauts. NASA and other space agencies study how plants grow in zero gravity, under artificial lighting, and in confined environments. Experiments aboard International Space Station show plants adapt surprisingly well to microgravity. Lettuce, radishes, zinnias, and wheat have all been successfully grown in orbit. In future, self-sustaining habitats on Mars or Moon will likely include greenhouses filled with crops, carefully monitored by sensors, and may be managed by robotic gardeners. Researchers already develop soil substitutes simulating Martian regolith, testing which plant varieties can thrive in low-light, low-pressure conditions. Back on Earth, plants are being woven into city infrastructure. Urban planners and architects incorporate living walls, green roofs, and tree-lined streets, not just for aesthetics, but for tangible benefits. Trees cool air through transpiration, reduce noise pollution, sequester carbon, and improve mental health. Rooftop gardens help manage stormwater runoff and insulate buildings, reducing energy use. There's also cultural and emotional roles. Botanical gardens, houseplants, even humble backyard veggie patches offer a sense of connection to nature. Studies show spending time around plants lowers cortisol levels, improves concentration, and boosts mood. We've drifted through chloroplasts and root tips, secret scents and snapping traps, uncovering that these quiet beings, so often overlooked or reduced to decor, are among most adaptable, essential, and fascinating life forms on Earth. They don't just survive, they shape worlds. They don't speak in words, but their language is written in sunlight, scent, movement, and memory. They breathe for us, feed us, heal us, and inspire us. We've seen their cunning strategies, hidden communication, moments of brilliance in darkness and daylight blaze. They defend themselves, outsmart predators, plan for futures, and even in their own slow way, learn from experience. They build the very ecosystems cradling life. And now, perhaps more than ever, they hold some keys to humanity's path forward. From climate solutions to space colonization, from medicine to sustainable agriculture. Plant intelligence isn't like ours, but it's no less remarkable. It's distributed, decentralized, resilient. It's democracy of cells, network without command center, wisdom without words. It's awareness measured not in seconds, but in seasons. But perhaps what makes plants most extraordinary is their fundamental generosity. Think about it. Plants give more than they take. They produce oxygen as a waste product of photosynthesis, waste that happens to be essential for most life on Earth. They create food from sunlight, air, and water, building complex organic molecules from simple inorganic ingredients. They stabilize soil, moderate climate, purify water, and create habitat for countless other species. And they do all of this without asking for much in return. Just some sunlight, some water, some nutrients from the soil. They don't demand, don't complain, don't compete with us for resources in ways that matter. They simply grow, quietly converting solar energy into the building blocks of life. This stands in stark contrast to how humans often operate. We take far more than we give back. We extract resources faster than they can regenerate. We produce waste that poisons rather than nourishes. We optimize for individual gain rather than collective well-being. But plants show us another way. They demonstrate that success doesn't require aggression, that strength can be quiet, that intelligence comes in many forms, and that the most powerful strategies are often the most patient ones. What can we learn from 400 million years of plant evolution? First, cooperation is often more effective than competition. The Wood Wide Web proves this beautifully. Trees that share resources, warn each other of danger, and support each other's growth create more resilient forests than those that don't. The whole becomes stronger than the sum of its parts. Second, diversity is strength. Ecosystems with many different plant species are more stable, more productive, and more adaptable to change than monocultures. This applies to human systems too. Diverse teams, diverse economies, diverse cultures tend to be more innovative and resilient. Third, patience pays off. Plants take their time. They don't rush. A tree might take 50 years to reach maturity, but then it might live for 500 more. This long-term perspective is something our fast-paced, quarterly earnings-focused culture desperately needs. Fourth, flexibility trumps rigidity. Plants can't move, so they become masters of adaptation. They adjust their growth, their chemistry, their partnerships based on conditions. They bend, but don't break. In an era of rapid change, this kind of adaptive capacity is invaluable. Fifth, waste can be wealth. In natural systems, one organism's waste is another's food. Dead leaves become soil. Carbon dioxide becomes sugar. There's no such thing as garbage. Everything is part of a cycle. Imagine if human systems worked this way. And finally, being rooted doesn't mean being stuck. Plants may be fixed in place, but they're constantly reaching out, through roots, through pollen, through scent, through seeds. They explore their worlds, form partnerships, and spread their influence far beyond their immediate location. Physical constraint can inspire creative solutions. Looking forward, the relationship between humans and plants is entering a new chapter. For most of history, we've used plants without truly understanding them. We've cleared forests without recognizing their role in climate regulation. We've tilled soil without appreciating the underground networks we were destroying. We've treated plants as passive resources rather than active partners. But that's changing. As we face challenges like climate change, food security, and biodiversity loss, we're realizing we need plants more than ever, not just as resources, but as teachers, partners, and inspiration for new ways of thinking. Biomimicry, learning from and mimicking natural systems, is a growing field. Engineers study how leaves manage water flow to design better solar panels. Architects study termite mounds, built by insects eating plants, to design naturally cooled buildings. Computer scientists study root networks to design resilient communication systems. Rewilding movements recognize that the best way to restore degraded landscapes isn't through engineering, but through allowing natural processes to unfold. Planting diverse native species, protecting soil microbiomes, removing barriers to natural succession. Regenerative agriculture borrows principles from natural ecosystems, using diverse crop rotations, maintaining soil cover, minimizing disturbance, integrating animals and plants in mutually beneficial ways. Urban greening initiatives recognize that cities need plants not just for aesthetics, but for functionality. Cooling urban heat islands, managing stormwater, improving air quality, supporting mental health. And perhaps most importantly, there's a growing movement toward reconnecting with nature on a personal level. People are growing houseplants, starting gardens, visiting forests, participating in citizen science projects. This isn't just nostalgia or a passing trend, it's recognition that we need these connections, that being around plants makes us calmer, healthier, more creative, more grounded. So next time you pass a tree, water a houseplant, or walk through a garden, remember, you're in presence of beings that may be older than your grandparents, connected to neighbors through living networks beneath soil, shaped by years, sometimes centuries, of experience. You're looking at organisms monitoring their environments, calculating trade-offs, forming partnerships, executing strategies for survival. You're looking at beings that in their own quiet way are thinking, just not like you do. In a world that often prizes speed, plants invite us to slow down, to notice the curve of a stem, the patience of a bud waiting to bloom, the way a leaf catches light. Their growth is both science and quiet poetry written in hormones and cells, unfolding inch by inch in stillness. Plants have been perfecting their craft for over 400 million years. Their legacy surrounds us in every seed, every sprout, every flower. It's not just biology, it's quiet brilliance in bloom. The story of plants is not separate from ours. It is our story. It is the breath we share, the food we eat, the places we live, and the thoughts we think. It is the shade under which we rest, the bloom that marks celebration, the root that connects all living things. It is a story written in green, growing all around us, asking only that we notice it. And perhaps most wonderfully, being rooted doesn't mean being stuck. And sometimes the harshest places give rise to the most extraordinary lives. The world is blooming all around you, quietly, patiently, beautifully. You just have to slow down to see it. And when you do, you might find that these silent, rooted beings have more to teach us than we ever imagined. About resilience, about community, about patience, about the power of quiet persistence, about how to thrive not by dominating, but by participating in the intricate web of life. The revolution isn't loud, it's green, and it's been growing all around us, all along.